Hello, you are listening to From McClay to Zama. I'm your host, Karen Miller. This podcast is about the adventures of two women from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who worked for the U.S. Army at Camp Zama, Japan, from 1953 to 1955. Their stories are told through hundreds of letters written home.
Hi, welcome to episode 37. This is letters 110 to 114 with an extra letter that I found yesterday thrown in as a bonus. I did a little research into Governor Fine, who was apparently planning to visit Zama. He was the 100th governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and seems like a pretty colorful character. A Republican who served from 51 to 55. He was the son of a coal miner from northeastern Pennsylvania who championed that part of the state especially. He died in 1978, and I can't wait to hear if he did end up visiting Zama and if Bern and Peg got to meet him. I'm sure if they did, they would have told their parents about that. So I was going through some things yesterday, cleaning up, and a letter literally fell out of a book onto my lap. The first thing I noticed was that it was in my mom's handwriting, Nancy, for those of you who follow the podcast. It was written July 31st, 2003, to her mother, Betty, who was Bern and Peg's older sister. And here it goes. Mother, thank you for all these things and special memories. Coffee, ice cream, pretzel sticks, and the shadow knows. Holding my hand while I walked the walls on the way to and from the Penway. Shopping at Miss T's and lunch in Pomeroy's tea room. Easter parades on the riverfront. Feeding ducks at Italian Lake. Super soft earlobes and beautiful legs. Betty Boop. Now wait, let me take your arm on this ice, laughs. Waking up in my uniform under your hospital bed. Our day on the sailboat. Watching you and Pat laugh. Coming to Morgantown to hold my hand and be my mommy when I needed one. Sharing my love of Deep Creek. Having the guts to fly to see me in Charleston. Understanding my unconventional friendships. For our talk and walks down memory lane this past week, chicken pot pie, Grandpa's house, Bellevue Park, 14th Street, and all the things that help me remember who I am and how I got here. For being my mom. It is now August 1st. Hope today will be a birthday to remember. Love, Nancy. Your 62-year-old baby. Wow, this is so sweet. I feel like it landed in my lap yesterday for a reason. So many things that were important to Bern and Peg are in here. Italian Lake, which I thought just reminded them of Japan, but was a special place during my childhood where they always took me. Number 7, I remember this. I was less than 10 and present for this bunch of laughs. My mother took her mother's arm to help her to the car on a winter AC day in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And they both ended up on the ground on their butts laughing. Nobody got hurt, but to this day, I think about taking somebody's arm to help them and falling down and pulling them onto the ground. I have a vague memory about the under the hospital bed story. I think my grandmother was in Harrisburg Hospital for some kind of surgery. My mom was working there as a 19, 20, 21-year-old. And I think my mom passed out while trying to change a dressing or something. So much for medical professionalism. My family had so many happy days boating, sailing especially. And my mom's special place was Deep Creek, Maryland. The Grandpa's house reference was to her father's farm. And most of the memories I've heard involving this man, Jesse Williamson, were not pleasant. But it sounds like there must have been something pleasant to remember. The occasion for the letter was my grandmother's 90th birthday. And her daughters threw her a big Betty Boop themed party. Her name was Betty, and even at 90, she had gorgeous legs, still. My first cousins came and their families, several of my mom's cousins, my aunt and uncle, Barbara and Ronnie, Bern and Peg, Uncle Duff, their eldest brother, and so that was all the surviving siblings except for my Uncle Mark, who was in California and obviously not able to come. My kids got to meet relatives they had only heard me talk about, and both of my dad's parents were there. My dad had been dead for 8 years by this time. My youngest, my son, was 3, and it was challenging for him to behave that day with no other little children present, and mom and grandma busy, socializing. So he didn't know too many of the people very well. My oldest daughter was 14, and she forgot to bring a dress to wear and ended up wearing one of my mom's. I remember that. She looked great in it. Sadly, 3 of my 4 grandparents outlived my parents. The pain my grandparents felt at my mom and dad's funerals will never leave me. I think it's probably the worst pain a person can feel. I hope to never find out. Another important letter I was lucky to add to my collection. So let's get started now with letters 110 to 114. This one's 110 is from Peg, written May 17th, 1954. Dear Mother and Daddy, do you like this paper better or don't you like it as well as the bond paper? Let me tell you, this thin onion paper I do not like. I can't believe it survived all these years. So it must be better paper than it seems. But to me, it's thinner than the tissue paper that we wrap gifts in. I thought I'd try it just for a change. No sense in getting in a rut over these things. Well, your 2 traveling daughters are full-fledged tankers. Gee, is it ever fun. I think I'll change my MOS to be tanker all the time. We, about 15 of us gals from Zama, left at 2 o'clock on Saturday and got up to Camp Fuji about 4:30. The fellows who invited us had a bus at the station at Gotemba, and we had a vague idea of what a tank ride would be like just as we traveled over the road from Gotemba to camp. Golly, what bounding. After having ridden in a tank, I'd much prefer the tank to that bus ride. They took us to our billets, which, in words of one syllable, are sadly lacking. They were single rooms, but I don't think they could even be called rooms because the partitions between them didn't extend from the floor to the ceiling. However, everything was clean and we were received with open arms from everyone. We changed clothes and met the tankers in their small club called the Sprocket, a sprocket being some thingamajig on a tank. Then we got acquainted, and they took us to the officers' mess for dinner and the party. There was nothing fancy about the whole deal, because I think there's something like a dozen women in the whole area, so everything is geared to male likes and dislikes. The club is a temporary building, and the dishes were regular GI, but the food was pretty good. We were all so hungry by that time that even another snack bar meal would have tasted like ambrosia. After the meal, we sat around and talked until the orchestra started playing. They had a floor show, and it was a pleasure to see how the fellows enjoyed it. We cosmopolitan people in the Tokyo area have seen the same acts over and over again, but they only get a floor show once every 6 weeks or 2 months up there, and they thought it was better than Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. After dancing some more, we had a buffet, and I was so glad because by that time I was starved again. We didn't stay up too late that night, so we got a good night's sleep. My bed was very comfortable, and my date, Al, very, very kindly loaned me a blanket from his bed so that I was very warm and comfy. Next day, they met us for breakfast at 10 o'clock, and I ate like a horse again. Gad, this appetite of mine is embarrassing, especially when someone else pays for it. Then we walked through camp, heading towards the tank pool. Camp Fuji is situated, naturally, at the base of Mount Fuji. Her Majesty didn't show her massive face until afternoon, but I got some pictures of her then, the first ones we've gotten. I know that we'll appreciate Zama from now on, and the first person who gripes to me that Zama is isolated, I'm going to tell them to go to Camp Fuji if they really want to know what isolation is. It's a very large installation being divided into 3 camps, North Camp, South Camp, and Middle Camp. We were in North Camp. There is absolutely nothing there except the camp. The town of Gotemba is about the same as Zama town, and that compares with Linglestown, Pennsylvania. So you can see what I mean about nothing to do or see. Al said that he wished he were in Korea instead of at Camp Fuji because Korea isn't any worse than Fuji and he could pile up points to rotate faster over there. I know exactly what he means. Anyhow, on with the story. Our dates don't fool around. They got the battalion commander's tank out of the pool and we rode in high style. Bern got down in the innards of the monster and Gladys and I had posts sticking out of the two hatches on top of the tank. I was the TC, or tank commander. Al was in the hatch with me, and it was a scotchy crowded, but I was glad to have him bump up against instead of bumping up against the hatch. So off we went. They had a sergeant drive the tank up the tank trail that they used for practice. We didn't go very fast, but it was so much fun. We came to a stream and crossed it without even shifting gears. Such a road, deep cinders, ruddy, and very bumpy, but our M46 took it right in stride. Then we got to the turning around place. Gladys' date thought we weren't getting enough fun out of the ride, so he thought that he'd drive, and drive he did. We went racing back down the trail, but he went off the trail at times and knocked down some trees and bushes for us. You just can't imagine what it's like to see a tree coming right up in front of you, and you just keep going at it like it isn't even there. So we came back down the trail, lickety-split, after laughing and enjoying it to the utmost. Getting in and out of the tank is quite a problem, but the only damage that was done is that I got some grease on my coat and had to send it to the cleaners. Then he took some pictures of the crew, and we went back to the nightclub. On the way back, Gladys saw what she thought was solid ground because the rest of the place was very muddy and ruddy, so she stepped on the solid ground. We all had hysterics, Gladys included, when she sank into the mud halfway up her leg. But she was a good sport about it, and I took a picture of just her feet. After all that carrying on, I was hungry again, so we ate hamburgers and talked some more. Then we got the bus and got to Gautama just in time to jump on the train. We didn't even have time to buy tickets, but we had to buy them on the train. It was a wonderful weekend, and the fellas treated us like queens. We have a standing invitation to go up any weekend. They are going to organize a party to climb Fujisan later in the season, and we're to be sure to come up for that weekend. They were very, very nice fellas, and I think they just had as much fun as we did. Oh, I almost forgot. Going up the tank trail, Bern drove the tank for a while. Ain't that a buster? Maybe she'll trade in the Plymouth for an M46. I got the box today with the shoes and stuff in it. Everything is just fine, Mother, and we sure appreciate the cheese and cheese crackers. I'm going to eat light for supper so I can go to town on them tonight. The shoes fit just fine, and I'm glad to have them. I think I'll be set on that score for quite a while now. Thanks again. Colonel Vantel is still mad at me. He got mad at me first on Friday. He went home at noontime without speaking to me. He had occasion to call Colonel Wilson later in the afternoon, and I picked up the phone and said, "Medical section, Miss Harnish." And he said, "Colonel Wilson, please." Usually he goes into a mild fit and says, "Hiya, Peg, how you doing?" etc., etc. He can just go ahead and be mad because he gets peeved just because I laughed at something that he didn't think was funny. Nuts to him. Maybe he'll even go home without making up with me, and I don't even care. It's about time he gets out of the Army because he's getting very petty and pays too much attention to small things that aren't important. I've been pretty busy today, for which I am glad, because it makes horrible Monday go by faster. I have some chores to do tonight, but Kaneki-san, my maid, I thought her name was Yamaguchi-san, but I found out that's her last name, has me so spoiled that I don't know what an honest chore is. Thanks again for the box. I won't pester you again for a long time, I hope. Tell everyone I said hello. Did you get your box yet? I can hardly wait. Couldn't you just crown me for reminding you all the time about it? Love, TC M46. Letter 111 from Peg, written May 19th, 1954. You dolls. Yep, I got the pretzels today, and I'm just overwhelmed. Golly, I'm so tickled. I passed the can all around the section, almost, and everyone said, "Where's the beer?" And they thought it was just the funniest present to get, but after they tasted them, they said, "Say, these are really good." So far, it looks as though almost all of them are still intact. They're packed 2 to a cellophane bag, and I don't think many of them are even broken. I'm just so delighted. I called Bern and told her, and she just screamed, boy, oh boy. First we get cheese and cheese crackers, and then a Takusan box of pretzels. We never had it so good. I should really be doing some work for Colonel Wilson now, but I don't feel like it. Besides, I'm too excited over the pretzels. Colonel Wilson is going to be a ball of fire. He told me yesterday that when he gets the job organized, it's going to require the full-time service of a steno. That's me. He said that while I will be right in the middle of it for a while, because he's going to try to convince the honchos that he will need a full-time girl. But in the meantime, the other consultants will be giving me work also. I got news for Colonel Wilson. Unless I get a 5 out of the deal, I'm not knocking myself out for him. Besides, I would rather work for all the consulting than just for him, because I'm not that fond of veterinary medicine. I would really like to work for Colonel Fancher all the time, though. He's the medical consultant and a perfect angel. He will not accept slipshod work and gives work back to me to be redone if the margins aren't proper or if he doesn't like the setup of the letter. If I could work for him full-time, I'd get back to efficiency. I once had, but it's too easy to develop careless work habits when it gets approved no matter how it's done. Yesterday, he started me making some slides for a lantern project for him. It's real clever. It takes perfect typing and a steady hand to mount the slides. I just love doing it, though, and I try my best to do a good job. He's very pleased with the slides I've made so far and is quite encouraging. It would be nice to work for him all the time. Besides the fact that he's exacting, he's a grand person. Colonel VT isn't mad at me anymore, but I don't have the same affection for him that I once did. However, he's leaving on the 7th of June, so I'll go along with the game until then. We've made reservations and got our annual leave approved to go to Kyoto on the 29th of May until the 4th of June. Now, I certainly hope something doesn't happen this time to prevent our going. Taffy doesn't know whether she can get off, but Bern and Happy and I are making all sorts of plans for the vacation. We hope to buy some cloisonné down there. I'm sure that if you look it up in the encyclopedia, you will have a better idea of what it is than if I described it or tried to describe it to you. The last time Bern was down there in September, she brought me the cutest little incense burner made of cloisonné. I'll have lots to tell you from that trip. There's nothing too exciting going on around here right now, so I don't have anything interesting to say. I hope I didn't bore you with work stuff, but that's about all the news. However, I just had to tell you how wonderful it is to have all those pretzels, and my friends thank you too. Please take the money out of my account for them if you haven't already done so, and for the postage too. Take care of yourselves.
Love, Peg. Letter 112 from Bern, written May 19th, 1954. Dearest folks, you will have to put up with my penmanship for this letter. A new office regime makes it temporarily impossible to find time for typing personal mail. It's now 8:30 p.m., and I actually started to write about 6:30 when I came back from eating. But there were several delays. First, I was just sad and looked out the window at the really beautiful sunset sky. These days are lovely, and knowing the rainy season will soon be upon us, we try to stay outdoors as long as possible. Last evening, I ate dinner at an office friend's quarters right here in Zama. They are tucked away in a small housing development right back of the theater in a place I didn't even know existed. They have a lovely little community set among ancient and beautiful pine trees and surprisingly lush with bird life. In general, the absence of bird life is remarkable in Japan. GIs tell me it's because these folks were forced to eat birds during the Middle War. A horrible term. But really, one could scarcely concentrate on conversation because of being conscious of the chitter-chatter of sparrows, etc. A lovely spot and a fine home-cooked meal. The man of the house, a Navy officer, is the chief cook. Ginny Belts, my hostess, is very odd and a different type of person, very athletic and boyish in appearance, and not domesticated at all, but interested in many subjects and in many people, which in turn makes her very interesting to know. She taught physical education in an Episcopal girls' school in Baltimore, so we have much in common. Her husband has had many years in the Navy as a desk service and is therefore well acquainted with civil service workings. Consequently, we all talked constantly during the evening, and I had a fine time. In fact, I'm invited for lunch there tomorrow because he feels like baking a pumpkin pie and Ginny doesn't eat pastry. Nice, nay? The other delay was caused by Mary Carrera coming in to tell me about her speech class and to tell me of a GS5 job opening in her office, which I sure would like. I know I'd like it very much because it is in line of newspaper and public information service. However, I'm not even asking for a release from special services because Mrs. Cartmel has planned to go back to the States in July for her daughter's wedding, and I'm slated to take her place for about 6 weeks. There will be another job opening if I become too discontented, or who knows, she may decide to stay in the U.S. The Prophet, Japan's most famous fortune teller, has told her she will be married this year. He may be right, and then I would get a GS7 job. Don't hold your breath. At lunch today, I saw Mr. Hudson, the Red Cross field director. He told me that our Gray Lady capping exercises are scheduled for June 4th. That's the day we are scheduled to get back from Kyoto. So you can imagine what fine shape we'll be in to get capped. However, we'll probably make it. I finished my final 3 hours work on Saturday morning, and Peg works her last 3 hours Sunday afternoon. Now that we have finished our probationary period, there is scarcely any need for our services. The hospital will admit very few patients while its current building program is going on. But in October, it's scheduled to reopen as the main hospital in the Far East Command, so perhaps the Gray Lady program will get back in full swing then. Perhaps someone will take pictures of the exercises, and then you can see our uniforms, real sharp. Peg has told you about our tank battalion weekend. Really, it was lots of fun, and that tank ride is something that I will never forget. My escort for the weekend was a young Texan who didn't talk very much, but was very careful to do the right thing by his date. He's going to teach animal husbandry and run his grandmother's ranch after he's served the remaining 1 year of his army hitch. A nice, steady, dependable lad who made me feel we aren't all going to the dogs as fast as magazine articles would lead you to believe. In spite of any previous griping or any which I might do in the future, and probably will, this experience has been the most valuable thing which ever happened to me as far as my understanding of people is concerned. It is really finally beginning to sink in that folks aren't either all white or all black, but that most of us are just kind of a shade of gray. Remember, there's much bad in the best of us and so much good in the worst of us that it all behooves any of us to talk about the rest of us, that it ill behooves any of us to talk about the rest of us. It's a quote, but it doesn't say from whom. Finally, that is no longer a piece of verse, but a fact. Maybe if I live long enough, I'll catch on to this whole business. A huge can of pretzels arrived today. What a wonderful surprise. Domo arigato, folks. Peg received the shoes and my comfort powder too, and thank you for thinking of that. I would especially need it when warm, sticky weather catches up with us again. You had asked about sending my red coat. Don't bother, unless you have already done so. I know I could use it, but my closet space is so small that I'm really having a problem now. I will make do with what I have. Did I mention that I'm having a lavender poplin and a white linen dress with red jacket made? The wardrobe is really quite adequate for Zama, although it's always a lift to get something new. Perhaps I did tell you that I had a black shiny straw hat made. It is kind of a shallow bonnet shape with a white edge and a cute cluster of daisies in the back. Oh, I'd love to see that. If Mary and I decide not to go on a camera tour to Hasson and Atami on Sunday, I shall wear the new bonnet for the first time to church. This will be the third Sunday away from church, and for that reason I am undecided about going on the trip. Something is missing when I don't get to the chapel for a long time. I'm still debating the point. Oh yes, would you like to hear about my afternoon? I got a small wart that appeared right smack under my right eye. I didn't like the way it looked, so I went to the dispensary, and this very fine new doctor very skillfully removed it. No pain, except for the pinch of a needle as he applied something newer than Novocaine. A few less lower eyelashes and an almost invisible scar are the only signs of the whole business. In a way, I'm glad this happened because I was favorably surprised with his skill as well as his manner and would not hesitate now to go to him for anything. Up until this point, I mentally planned to come home at once if any illness developed because I had absolutely no faith in army medics. In fact, the last one we had told Katie Strauss that she was just bored when she reported to him with a persistently sore shoulder. As Katie says, me bored with a room full of kids to face each day. At least Major Brockenberry didn't give me that line when I reported to him. My only problem now, do eyelashes grow back again? I've been talking to you guys for an hour and a half now, plus interruption from Peg, so it's time to take a shower and go to bed. See, I love you both more than 4 new library books I brought home tonight. Ain't that quite an admission from me? Lots of love, Bernice. Letter 113 from Peg, written May 24th, 1954. Dear Mother and Daddy, I had the nicest surprise this morning. In the morning's mail was a graduation announcement from Jeannie Whistler. I just can't imagine that she's graduated from high school so soon, can you? Anyhow, I wrote her a letter this afternoon, and I'm going to buy her something and send it to her. Sure hope she's got a good job lined up and works for a while before she thinks of getting married. By the way, the pretzels are down to about a quarter of the can. They are so good that I had them for breakfast yesterday morning. Of course, we've passed them out to Takasam friends, but we like to share Pennsylvania's prized product with our buddies. Speaking of Pennsylvania, there was a notice in the Daily Bulletin the other day for everyone from PA to contact a man here at Zama. I imagine it has something to do with Governor Fine's visit here. He wasn't in his office when I called, and he's supposed to call me, but hasn't done so up to now. We had a quiet weekend, but I enjoyed it. I'm so blasted easy to please, though, that I enjoy just about anything. We went slopping through the rain in Yokohama on Saturday and did some shopping. Don't tell Mark, but we forgot completely about his birthday until you mentioned his birthday dinner in your last letter. So we got him a gift. Then I saw the dearest little pocket book for Leanie. Well, we had to send something to Marky, and then we couldn't forget Sis. So the Harnesses at 412 Delaware will be getting a package in the not-too-distant future. Please tell me when Sis's birthday is, will you? Yesterday we went to church 2 times. That's some kind of record, I'm sure. Bern, Happy, and I went to the regular 11 o'clock service, and I just dearly loved Chaplain Whipple. He's a man who lives his religion, and you can practically see a halo around him. He has the nicest smile, and the way he reads the Bible just intrigues me. He makes it come to life. The feature of the Vesper service was a lady who was supposed to speak on the Holy Land. We thought she would tell us about the various places of interest there, but instead she gave us a dissertation on the political situation and was very boring. We inveigled Mary Carrera to go along with us, and Mary's Catholic, so we apologized to her, although she picked up a few pointers of what not to do in for her speech class. She's taking a course in public speaking 2 nights a week. Yesterday afternoon, I GL'd. It was, great lady. It was a very interesting afternoon. We have a major in the hospital who had a very severe heart attack. The nurse asked me if I would write a letter to his wife for him if he dictated it. She told me the first letter he dictated was very morose, understandably, and he must be feeling scoshy better because he said, I can't exert myself in any way except to move my bowels, and I have to do that by myself. I grinned when he said it. He told me that his wife would get a kick out of it too. I suppose he's feeling better then. Then I did some typing and wound up in the afternoon by playing a few hands of 500 rummy with 2 of the fellows. They really skunked me, and I just wished they were playing against Helen Harnish instead of Margaret Harnish. She'd really show them a thing or two about 500 rummy, wouldn't she? I had a talk with Colonel Goriup today about getting a letter of availability from Med Section in order to get a job elsewhere. Bern mentioned in her last letter to you that Mary has a job open in her office for a GS5. I'm interested in it, and the first step is getting a letter of availability. He BS'd around for a while and told me that if this happens and if that happens, maybe I can get a GS5 in MedSec. But I told him I was pretty sure of getting one elsewhere without all of the waiting around for med section. So he said that he would be the last one to stand in the way of anyone advancing themselves, etc., etc. And he agreed to give me the letter. Now I'll have to go for an interview in TI&E. TI&E means Truth, Information, and Education. I hope I can get something else because I've worked long enough in med for not being any more interested in it than I am. I'll keep you posted. I can hardly wait for Saturday in Kyoto. Just 4 more days to go. Joy, joy. Today at lunch, I ran into 2 of the fellows of the 14th Tank Battalion who we visited 2 weeks ago. They asked me to eat with them, which I did. They said to be sure and come up again. I accepted most readily because that tank riding is the most. It's almost time to quit, and I don't really have anything else more to say. Take care of yourselves. Love, Peggy-san. Letter 114 from Bern, written May 25th, 1954. Hi, folks. Wait till you hear about the expensive supper that I had tonight. Right here in my room, too. A 25-knot wind is blowing, so I didn't want to go out again after once arriving at the billet. Hence, at noontime, I went to the fruit store, and for $2.15, I was able to acquire 4 bananas and 1 cantaloupe. Isn't that terrible? I never should have bought the cantaloupe, but I was so hungry for fresh fruit that I did indulge. It is surprisingly delicious, and I'll eat the other half for breakfast in the morning. But what prices? Remind me not to go on a fruit diet over here. Rainy weather spoiled the big celebration planned for Yokohama over the past weekend. They were celebrating the 400th anniversary of the opening of the port. Wow, 400th. Water shows and a big parade went on in spite of the rain, but we didn't attend. However, about 5 o'clock, as we were walking along one of the main shopping streets, we did see many of the floats, and they were very beautiful and elaborately decorated. Beauty, but not durability, is the keynote of Japanese handiwork. We managed to get quite a bit of shopping done between showers and topped off the afternoon with an early supper at the German restaurant Hausa. Sauerbraten is their best dish, in my opinion. The meat simply melts in your mouth. German cooking gives every dish a distinct flavor, which is a great deal more than can be said for PX or snack bar chefs. I guess Peg told you our Kyoto plans are made for a visit from the 29th of May through the 3rd of June. We are saving a good bit of yen by taking a day coach down. Daddy, I will have time on the 10th-hour trip to make a thorough study of the Japanese railroad system. Shall I write you a separate letter on it? We're not staying at the same hotel I visited before, but we have chosen another special services hotel right in the center of Kyoto. This way we will not be as dependent on scheduled tours, but can do some exploring on our own. Everyone says that that's the way to do it. This is the city where beautiful cloisonné ware and Damascus jewelry is made, so we plan to visit the factories. Also, a side trip to Gifu to see the cormorant fishing is an important item on our agenda. All of us are looking forward both to a change of scenery and a vacation from our daily routine. Peg threatens to set the alarm for 6:15 Monday just so she can hurl it across the room and go back to sleep. Oh, that's funny. Actually, this will be my regular summer vacation, I suppose, because Mrs. Cartmel expects to leave about July 1st and probably won't be back until the end of August or 1st of September. I never thought the day would come when I would feel sorry for her, but I sure do right now. A New York City wedding is ridiculously expensive, and she's worried sick over the cost. She's divorced, and so I suppose we'll have to bear the entire expense. She estimates the cost between $2,000 and $2,500 for a 2 or 3 hour affair. Is it worth it? Not to me. Daddy-san, how about sending my 1954 driver's license? All one has to do to acquire a Japanese license is to present your current stateside permit. A friend at the office has one of these little MGs and has offered to let me drive anytime I want. She lives right here on the post, and we go out together quite a bit in the evening to a movie or over to the Navy Club to play ping pong. Her husband is going to teach me to shoot pool, too. I'm just itching to drive that car, but hate to risk it without a license. They will only be here for 2 more months, so how about sending it in the next letter, okay? You might as well send Pegs, too. Maybe it will come in handy sometime. Besides, I'd like to say I've driven in Japan. Bragging, you know. Chaplain Whipple had an excellent sermon yesterday on possessed ones, reminding us that we could be possessed by something good and find, instead of the usual evil thing, which one usually thinks of when this phrase is used. He enthusiastically recommends the evening speaker, a woman who was to speak on the Holy Land. So Peg, Gladys, and I ate an early and hurried supper and even persuaded Mary Carey, who is Catholic, to join us at the chapel. What a disappointment. The woman didn't speak of the places where Jesus lived and journeyed, but concentrated on the modern situation of the division of Palestine into Israel and Jordan, and the conflict between the Zionists and the Arabs. This, too, could have been a fascinating subject, but she rambled hither and yon without accomplishing much of anything. However, we all probably got something out of the session. I enjoyed the opening gospel-type hymn singing. Mary got some pointers about how not to make a speech for her speech class. Gladys and Peg, well, you'll have to ask them. I don't know. Saturday morning session at the Grey Ladies was very enjoyable. The other gal didn't show up, so I was real busy and quite pleased to be feeling useful for a change. I arranged the supply cart, made coffee, set the table in the Red Cross lounge, served coffee, and talked to a half dozen men or so who came in for the 10 o'clock break. Then I took the cart and walked out through the hospital and met darling little Diane Tobin, age 7. Blonde, straight hair, brown eyes, and the brightest, perkiest little intelligent miss. Not smart or bratty, just interesting. We talked about school and her baby brother and her Japanese chums and Roy Rogers and Trigger. And then, in answer to her request for some comic books, but not the scary kind, please, I went through the wards and the lounge, scrounging some for her. I also found some copies of Silver Bells and another children's magazine. Then I went on to C ward. I met a red-haired, blue-eyed young Irish lad who had been stationed at Zama for a long time and knows all the GIs in my section. We had quite a gossip session, discussing this one and that, and he gave me a new slant on some of the boys. Next, I listened to an older woman telling about all her troubles and trials and tribulations. She really has them, too, because her husband just died over here, and she's in the hospital with an infected leg from some kind of insect bite. She missed her plane priority, and she has so many details to take care of, etc. It was an excellent chance to practice a Grey Lady edict, which I had no previous need to practice. That of trying to turn the patient's thoughts and words away from self-sympathy, etc. I don't know how successful I was, but at least she didn't cry when I left, which is what she was about to do when I walked into the room. A little soldier from West Virginia was fascinated by the way the Japanese people take up the grass in square patches, do some mysterious digging around underneath, and put the whole lawn back together again. I had observed this too, but I couldn't explain who or why, because I don't know. However, from there we went on to farming, and he was delighted to help enlighten my ignorance on the subject. We had a fine discussion. All I did was lend an ear. Back to the Red Cross office, did a little typing for the director, and it was time to leave. A fine, interesting, and I hope useful morning. I enjoyed it. By this time you must be scotchy cross-eyed from trying to read this scribbling. I'll take pity on you and quit for now. Next letter from Kyoto. Love, Bern-san. I never can imagine that my aunts rode in tanks, and I can't believe they didn't tell me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Enjoy your week. I hope you're enjoying the podcast, and if you are, please subscribe in Spotify. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus button in the top right-hand corner and rate. This will help my listeners find my podcast more easily. You can access the show's website at www.FromMcClay2Zama.com, where I posted photos and links from the episodes. The podcast is now available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Patreon, and Amazon as well. New episodes will be available each Friday morning. The letters were written by my aunts Bern and Peg, transcribed by me. I write and record the show and have created the artwork and original music. Our producer is Zeke, our sound engineer is intern Sylvie, and the security is provided by intern Frey. Thanks to my great-grandparents, John and Helen, who loved us all and thought it was a good idea to save the letters. All rights reserved, 2024.